Starting. Live.
It's yellow.
We're live.
Are we live?
Yes.
No,
It's been a month.
Muted again.
I'm waiting for the YouTube thing to looking at the latency here. Oh, spinning.
It's doing something.
We are there.
It is. Yeah. Hooray.
Okay.
It's exciting.
Okay. Wait,
Hush falls. Hello.
Okay. Hi. I don't think we've all been together.
It's been a while.
For a while.
It's December.
We're on
This is
vacation,
crazy.
kind of.
Well, meeting cancellations have started coming through, which I'm very happy about. Just in general, it's December. For the December month, like people are canceling all the recurring meetings or like, we'll set up a new series after the holidays. And so my calendar is clearing out rapidly, which is great, which means
you're hoping they forget.
Well, no, I'm not. Well, I don't have any.
See, I'm technically supposed to be on vacation this week.
Are you?
It's not. Yes.
Then what do you mean technically?
Hunter wants me to write this white paper, and right now I have 6 pages of bullets.
Writing prose is like the thing I hate more than anything in the world, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's hard to write in an accent. Especially when you have to write no in like 6 syllables.
I was just saying yesterday.
No.
I was just saying yesterday, I haven't spoken to you in a long time. We haven't had any of our chats.
Yeah, I was in Greece.
Yeah. How was that? Was that a holiday?
No, well, yes and no. It was I spoke at a conference called Voxed, VOXXED, Thessaloniki. Very, very nicely run, well organized conference. And then took an extra. That was on Thanksgiving Day because I worked on Thanksgiving Day because that's how I roll. Turns out they don't celebrate Thanksgiving in Greece.
What?
Not sure what that's about. And then Mo and I went to Athens for a day and looked at old things.
Oh, that's awesome. That's very awesome. I haven't been there. I would like to be there. I've seen things from there in museums in other countries, and I enjoyed it very much. But I wouldn't mind seeing what's left there by actually being there. That would be
super old.
Yeah, very old. Well, that's cool.
Yeah,
I have 2 watches again.
2 watches
again.
That's exciting.
I'm back. Everything is normal. You can all relax. I'm back to this is my my Tick Watch E, which I got on Kickstarter, which they're an established company, it turns out, but they wanted to make an Android watch, and so they had their own platform. So this was like $100 Android Wear smartwatch.
Nice.
And it's really good. It's really, really good.
What's the battery life?
Amazing. So at the end of the day, when I take it off, it's about 46% left.
Nice.
So if I wanted to keep going, I could. Like it's at 72% now. I've been wearing it. I put it on at like 9 o'clock this morning. It's really good, and it's actually much more responsive than the Huawei watch I was running before. I stopped wearing the Huawei watch because the haptic engine stopped working, and wearing a watch that doesn't give you alerts or doesn't vibrate when you get alerts is kind of pointless. So I stopped wearing it, and then I tried that Huawei Band Pro, and it was very cheap, which was very good, and its fitness things are good, but I really wanted it for alerts more than anything else. And it just didn't, it doesn't have a full touchscreen. When an alert comes in, it doesn't auto scroll. You have to tap it to read everything. It was terrible for that type of thing in the end. I think it'd be great if you just want to do sleep tracking and just have and do fitness and stuff, but I needed this again. So anyway, I'm back to this and it's good. I'm enjoying it. So that's good.
Well, we're talking nerdy stuff. Did you guys see the Snapdragon announcement thing today?
Stuff today? Yeah. So Windows ARM.
Supposed to be battery life of like 20 hours.
22 hours or something, 21 hours.
And then standby of up to 30 days, they were saying.
Yeah, they're talking about not having to charge it for a week.
Yeah, but if it's slow all day.
Yeah, it's not slow all day, apparently.
Snapdragon anything has never blown my mind.
What do you mean? This is a Snapdragon. It's brilliantly fast. This is literally the same chip that's in the new laptops.
So why would I want a phone chip in my laptop?
Because do you have a phone chip in your tablet? You do, right? And it's perfectly fine.
Really? My iPad is faster.
The same chip as in your iPhone.
Is it?
It's one generation ahead. And often now they're actually almost, aren't they the same now? They're all like 10x or 11x, whatever the heck they call them. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. I mean, otherwise it won't be successful. It'll be pointless.
they're talking about the first ones. It's I mean, it does emulate the or translate or whatever the
for x86 apps. Yeah.
Yeah. So
which apparently is pretty good though. So like, I mean, I think this is the beginning of. We'll see. I mean, obviously not for us. These laptops aren't designed for power users. They're designed for normal, quote unquote, normal users. And they're also always connected because they're LTE. So even when they're closed, they're always connected to the network. And they're completely instant on. It's like an iPad. You hit a button and they're on instantly. There's no like, oh, it's it's connected standby. You hit the button and then like it comes on within 3 seconds. It's not like that apparently. So we'll see. We'll see. But interesting new development there, which I thought was pretty cool. So yeah, no, this is the Pixel 2 XL. I upgraded my Pixel phone. I'm very happy with it so far.
I have both 2 and XL.
Well, I had the Pixel XL.
Okay.
And I gave that to my son. And so now I have the Pixel 2 XL, and my wife got the Pixel 2. She had the Nexus 5X, which was like 2 years old. That went to my daughter. So now we've all got Pixels or Nexuses. And yeah, very happy. The phone's great. Really good. You got an 8, right?
I got an 8, and it is a joy.
8S?
An 8S Plus.
Because you just like give me the biggest
all the way to the 10, but not really a 10.
Not really a 10, yes.
Like, look, here's an attractive picture of Miguel de Icaza.
Is that portrait mode?
That's my wallpaper. That is portrait mode. It makes anybody look +2 prettier than they usually are.
Literally not.
Miguel always looks pretty. I don't think you can show.
No, it literally takes any human and gives them +2 charisma. You know how I know?
Because you did it.
Look.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
True story.
I have not tried portrait mode yet.
Yeah. Because your portrait mode is not nearly as good as my portrait mode.
Mine's AI driven. It means it's better.
Mine, it make me look.
Makes you look something.
Look exactly like myself.
Yep.
So supportive.
I am absolutely supportive. No, other than that, I was just saying to John before we got on air, my house is decked out with Google Homes now. I have 5 throughout the house because I bought 2 of the Home Minis when I bought this, and then I didn't realize I was going to get 2 free ones. So then I got 2 free ones, and I already had the original Google Home. So I have 5 in the house now.
Give me one.
No, I'm using them all.
Free stuff.
They're all spread out the house, so I can just yell, "Hey Google" at any point now, and I can turn off the Christmas tree, and I can change the thermostat, or I can play music, or I can ask what the weather's going to be, or what my weather. It's pretty good.
Hey Google, spy on me.
Yeah, everybody's spying.
I don't care. Like, my phone's always on. What do I care?
Say that into the microphone.
That's just an old man's thing, isn't it? Hey, they're spying on me. I don't care.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take a hard disagreement on that one.
Why is that one?
Because it's a little more.
You've got Siri spying on you.
Have an Alexa, dude. It's like sitting in front of you.
Alexa loves me, though.
There are people I admire and things I can't do without, but I'm still trying to figure out human love.
Okay. I don't know how that made your point, but okay. Other than proving you're a hypocrite, that's no problem at all.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and boot him off the call, and I'll move on to the community links. Does that sound good?
Oh, dear. Sure.
Yeah, we need more guests.
We need more guests.
Do.
Next year, let's commit.
Next year will be the
year.
Let's commit to a guest every other week.
Yes, let's do that. I think that's a great
I have
idea.
to click on me. Wait, no, that's not it. I have to do something else.
I see that John has become a director.
John is a master director, as always.
It's been quite some time. How do I set the thing to...
Not like that.
You're so mean.
Yeah, it's kind of mean. I clicked on
I
cameraman.
I wasn't.
It's because I'm from the Commonwealth.
You're not from the Commonwealth.
That was what everyone who's mean says as an excuse to be mean.
Oh, no, that's what exactly one person is from the Commonwealth says to me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do I click on present to everyone?
Of all people. Yes, you click on. Also, John, would you do us a favor, both me and Damien, as well as the listening public, and just install just a few more extensions in Chrome? I think.
Oh, I've actually got some hidden. Did you know you can do this, by the way? This is
John.
You know, we need to have a show and tell sometime. I could teach you guys how to use
We do
extensions.
this intervention every time.
There's no scenario where that's okay, John.
I'm judging you so hardly right now.
Yeah. Do you really? How many processors are dedicated to running your extensions?
You know where
6 extensions.
I all my processors are going right now to sharing my screen.
No?
They're not.
Don't you dare talk bad about Skype for Business.
So listen, we're going back to Hisham's blog posts.
Okay.
He's been doing a series on localization configuration with ASP.NET Core 2. So he's kind of built up from, first of all, getting localization cultures from a JSON file. Then he moved into actually like using those localization resources. And in this one, he is dynamically reading the cultures at runtime from the JSON file. So when you go in and call in to use request localization, he's reading from what's actually in his request culture provider.
Yep.
Setting that up. So cool to see as he's continue to build this out.
Yeah. Very cool.
Just continued march of progress for the identity server folks. They've released some new templates with Identity Server 4. What I like with this is, just a reminder, you can do this .NET new and just install these templates and good to go. So
It'd be worth pointing out, of course, as well, that we did an MVA, Microsoft Virtual Academy, with Brock Allen from Identity Server that is up on the Microsoft Virtual Academy site.
Yep.
So you can see him teach me all about identity and OAuth this and OAuth that.
Cool.
All the O's, all the auths.
All right. Okay. Steve Gordon.
Commissioner Gordon?
Yes. Steve. So Steve Gordon wrote about gotcha here with environment variables with ASP.NET Core 2.0 and Linux. And the deal is when you have delimited, like nested environment variables, the colon delimiter works in a lot of places, but not everywhere. And so on the newer Linux, the newer Debian, so this is Debian stretch, you need 2 underscores as a delimiter.
Yep.
So he talks about how he troubleshot that. And he said, hey, I went and tried to look up where this was documented that the delimiter no longer works because it used to work with the Jessie images. And I dug around myself this morning too, and I didn't see a change log thing where they said, I did, there is in the ASP.NET GitHub issue, right? There's
I can only speak to the ASP.NET side. We've always supported the double underscore as a delimiter because we know that there are platforms that don't allow colon in environment variable names. But we don't keep track of which platform from version to version supports one or the other. But our config system supports either, so that you can use double underscore when you have to because you can't use colon.
Cool.
It might be worth saying.
Stopped.
It might be worth mentioning that, just for people who have no idea what you're talking about, that like Debian's a Linux, right? And Jessie was a stable version of that Linux, and Stretch is now the stable version of that Linux.
Don't assume that everyone knows
Buster is the testing version that will become those are the fun code names. So when you're off complaining about .NET Service Pack 1 September refresh rollup hotfix patch 6, you can also use names like Stretch and Jessie and Buster.
That's a very good point.
Which is way more intuitive.
Yep. Yeah, I think we should use random names like the Docker containers.
There you go. It is docked.
Sassy scientist.
Yeah, exactly.
Docked. I just wanted to check. It is docked in our docs. So if you go to ASP.NET Core doc site, go to fundamentals configuration. Yep. There is a bullet point there around in configuration considerations. It says if a colon can't be used in environment variables on your system, replace the colon with a double underscore.
Yep. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it is there. It's and that's been there for a while, but it's something you don't know about it till you run into it. And
no,
like, why is this not working?
Yeah.
And configuration is one of those things that's frustrating to troubleshoot because you're like,
why isn't the value there?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I totally agree.
Cool. So this is by Anuraj, and he's writing about multi-tenant applications. This is I would call this a pretty naive or a pretty simplistic approach. This is just using an action filter, and it's reading it out and then applying it to things. So basically, he builds up to when he says sample.localhost or hello versus localhost. He does different things based on this action filter. So I would call this out more as a reminder of you can use action filters to do quite a lot of stuff. Right. People that have built out full multi-tenant, like there's a lot of stuff to think of as far as identity and all that kind of stuff, right? But yeah, so I thought this was a pretty cool, application of, he took an action filter and solved a problem there. So, pretty cool.
Cool.
Cesar de la Torre, as always, right? This is following in his pattern of writing 100 pages to completely and thoroughly document something. This is really good and in depth. So here he's talking about I-hosted service and background service class, and he, I won't go through all this, but this is pretty in depth documentation about how to go out, how to build background services. So. Very cool stuff. Yep.
Yeah, using the new I-hosted service.
Yep, and of course he's really good about just diagrams and like spelling stuff out in detail. So very nice. So Tien, he's been building out this simple commerce. So this is a commerce application. I like this because this is going beyond the very simple store, add to cart, and then the rest is an exercise for the reader. This is a full commerce site. And he's building this out, and here he's showing how to deploy it to AWS, Elastic Beanstalk, and Postgres. So just nice to see this, as he's walking through. Here's how to actually go and deploy that. So, okay, so this one is from Nimara, and this is talking about logging with ASP.NET. So specific, calling out some things in here for ASP.NET Core as well. And there is a easy.common NuGet package that
Easy.common.
Yep.
That is awesome, actually. That's a good name.
Yeah, it is a pretty good.
It's a pretty good name.
You want that? Yeah, but so this is kind of in depth, like logs out a bunch of stuff for you, kind of by default. So you can just turn it on and it'll write out a diagnostic report for you. Kind of neat. Okay, so here we've got from, I believe it's Fabian. Let me look here. Fabian, yep. So here he's two from Fabian. One is CRUD operations in Angular with ASP.NET Core, and HateOS. So that's hypertext as the operating something of the something. I get pretty far through that. Engine of application state. There we go. So I call it, yeah.
Yeah,
So
hypermedia is the engine of application state. It's like hate oats.
Yeah.
Something like that, without the T.
Yeah, so this is a, pretty full walking through implementing that. So this is application state using ASP.NET Core. So a lot of code here. But so this is pretty cool, seeing as he's kind of worked through that pattern here. Then he's also applied that to pagination. So there's the Angular Material Paginator, which he's got a link to at the end of this.
If you make anything that has paginator in it, you will seem smarter than your peers.
Exactly, yeah. So this is just,
also marshalling. A
paginated marshaller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A thunking marshalling paginator.
Yeah, if you do a thunking marshaller across paginations.
So this morning I sat in on the CoreFX review thing that they do, and it sounded like that for like an hour straight with paginated thinking.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay. So this is this kind of standard Angular material pagination system, and so what he's gone through and done here is implemented that. So this is setting up the API from the back end to
That's cool.
work with that.
Yeah.
Nice to see that all
so
built
this is
out.
a Spa app. He has Angular in the front, and he has a back-end API written in ASP.NET Core, and obviously the front-end component makes some very strong assumptions about the API that it's calling into, or the shape of the model or something, and so you have to satisfy that. Is that
exactly
right? Okay.
Yep. So cool. Okay, Matt McMillan, talking about ASP.NET Core applications with Bamboo. So Bamboo is a build server. I think we've seen maybe a year or two ago, somebody else had written something up. This is a current one talking about setting up Bamboo as a build server and build tasks for ASP.NET Core. So nice. Bamboo is from Atlassian. One I haven't worked with, but nice to see that written up. Andrew Locke, back again. So here he's talking about using Docker Hub to automatically build Docker images for ASP.NET Core apps. So he's talking about, integrating that in with both the Docker tooling and then also Docker Hub.
So this is publishing your images to Docker Hub? Is that what
Yes.
that means? I see.
Yep.
Okay.
So, yep.
More than just saying Docker push.
Yeah, I mean, so here he does have Docker push, but this is all integrating it all the way through.
It
So
integrates it with GitHub, so I'm assuming there's a hook involved, and so like it basically every time you make a code change, it'll end up with a new image on Docker Hub.
Yep. There you go.
An automated build. Looks like it.
Yep.
Every push to your GitHub triggers a new build of your Docker image.
Yep. So
nice.
There you go.
Fancy.
Pretty cool. All right. So now who's this guy? So yeah, three new MVAs. Scott mentioned MVA earlier. That's Microsoft Virtual Academy. So
there it is.
Yeah.
Sorry,
so these are live now. This is the beginner one. So Scott did a full.
That is an extremely flattering picture.
It auto plays when you start.
Maria looks thrilled to be there as well.
Yeah. There, she's smiling, and you're like,
my boss is making me do this.
Yeah. Well, I should have gotten better. I don't know.
Yeah, good job, John.
Yeah, definitely
Damn.
a shortfall. So this is the beginner course going through, getting started up through, basic CRUD and logging and stuff. Then the next one, going through more building out an application. This is more of a going beyond Hello World to, hey, let's actually build an app. So working with things like Web API, Swagger, publishing, etc. And then Jeff and I did a bunch. That's not a good picture either.
There's really no way.
Yeah, it can't be done. Freeze frame on a video, they're always horrible. Like
you'd think it would be 24 frames a second of amazing opportunities for you to look pretty.
Yeah, there's thousands
23 out of an unlimited number of bad pictures of you.
This is again something I believe AI should be helping me with.
Yeah, there should be more AI.
Well, there's a limit of how much compute power one has.
I think could Photoshop something in. I don't know. So like lens flare, for instance. If
you had more lens flare, it makes anybody look better.
So here we talked about some stuff like advanced internals with middleware, advanced configuration. We did some things about running in production. So some pretty cool stuff here overall. The advanced configuration too. There was some neat stuff, both configuration both here and authentication authorization stuff were some of my favorites. Jeff did a really cool job here. So anyhow, tons of great stuff. This is fresh content. We just did this in, what was it, late October?
Yep, it's all 2.0.
Good stuff. 2 late arrivals. People pinged me after I kind of pre-leaked what I was planning on talking about. This is a global exception handler for .NET. So this is if you want something that kind of configures global exceptions. It's going to, instead of return it returns a 500 for every exception. And then he goes through and shows how to kind of set things up and configure it and handle specific exceptions. So
interesting. When it says global, do you know where it's hooking in order to do that?
Middleware, right?
Well, that'll catch request exceptions.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah, I'm not sure source-wise where he's all digging in.
Is good, but obviously you can get other exceptions. And in .NET Core 1X, there was no way to observe.
Are you saying that it's not possible? You're like leading the question.
In 1X, there wasn't. In 2.0, they added back the APIs on the app domain type that allowed you to register handlers for globally uncalled exceptions, which was a big ask. So yeah, this is use exception handler. So this seems to be capturing exceptions to do with the request pipeline only, which is the majority of them usually. So
okay, well, let's log an issue.
Yeah, well, I know other libraries, whether it's like App Insights or Nix. What's the one he has? Not exceptional. The other one, I don't know. I can never remember the name of all these libraries.
Yeah.
Observer, or not that one, the other one. He's listening, so he'll tell me. Like I'll watch it in the lag goes through. He'll tell me what I'm talking about. His library that does this,
exceptional
handles all those bits. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it has the global handling as well, even on .NET Core 2. So
cool. All right. Cool. Okay, last one. So this is from Damian Bowden, and he's talking about sending direct message using SignalR. So this is the latest SignalR, alpha or whatever we're up to.
Yes, it's still an alpha.
Alpha. All right. So here he's sending, real-time chat messages and stuff using Angular. So he's got it kind of plumbed through Angular. Sometimes that can be a little more complicated, but I've seen some really cool things people have built out using Angular with SignalR in the past. So this is pretty cool with that. So as always, tons of code from him, tons of links. So very detailed, and here's the repo for all that as well. And,
nice.
yeah. All right. So now I'm done.
It's great.
You're back.
And
Yes. Yeah. Hooray.
Are we still locked on you, John?
I don't know. Are we?
it's great.
Looks like we're still locked on you. Maybe not. Ooh, presenter Scott Hanselman to everyone.
What a talented.
Now we're only looking at Scott. Is that what you just did?
Not doing that wrong at all, John.
I'll give myself a solid C+. But it's been
go
a
ahead
month.
and not click on me now, John. You need to turn me off.
Yep.
So just kick from call.
No.
You're presenting me to everyone, John.
Yeah, you force presented him. So you've ended. Okay.
Foundation has ended your presentation.
That looks better, I think. How are you, Scott? I haven't spoken to you in a long time.
I have a job.
Mm-hmm.
Which is good. I just updated the speaking section of my website while John was presenting.
Okay.
Because I'm lousy at updating my website. I am speaking at the Portland area .NET users group in an hour and a half.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is good.
Nice.
And I'm a little nervous.
That's a good thing.
Is it?
Means you care.
I can show you my presentation that I'm working on.
Excellent.
That's current
Nice.
status. It's a little rough.
That's pretty much how every document I'm ever asked to write starts out.
Yeah. So I'm feeling good
you
about
asked me to write words. Oh.
Yep.
Yeah. That's very good. Is there any? What about how is your finger on the pulse of the .NET community right now? Is there anything that you wanted to?
I think that there is a combination between. Is it switching between things, or I just assume that John has always done it on the wrong person?
No, it's right. I'm watching the feedback.
I think that it is a combination of people who are comfortable and familiar with open source, taking our stuff, 60% of quote unquote our stuff, and 40% of the great things that they find in the community that John talks about, the containers, the microservices, the open fast, all the different great things that there are out there.
Yeah.
And then there are the people who are not comfortable with anything but the Microsoft stuff, trying to deal with the fact that some of these open source projects aren't supported, or they're just written by one person. And you either need to pay that person, get involved, help out, be a member of, like, if you don't understand the full stack and get support on the full stack, then you need to get support in the full stack. And that means either only use Microsoft, which I don't think isn't necessarily a good thing, or support a whole lot of open source projects. And I see that a lot of companies out there in the community just aren't prepared to do that.
Yeah, this seems to be a topic that's come up more and more recently, which is like, what is the true cost of participating in open source, or even consuming open source? And I think there seems to be a resurgence of the idea, or even just an initial realization, and a lot more people championing this idea of that if you consume open source, you're now part of the project. You didn't buy a product. You're not the customer. You're part of the team.
But it seems that some people will go and clone that, bring it into the project, not talk to their bosses, and then an open source project has become a piece of your production code, and no one mentioned it.
Right. And then when the does hit the fan at some point in the future, if it does, and this is where a lot of the original FUD around open source happened. I mean, as is always the case, some FUD is often based in real concerns, and it gets lost in the whatever. And I think there is a real concern for certain types of customers and companies, which is like, well, what happens when the unthinkable happens for this open source library? Are we prepared to react for that? Are the mechanisms in place for me to even know? Does the technology stack I'm using, is it capable of dealing with the situation when third-party dependency deep in my dependency graph?
True story. 17 years ago, working at a bank, put Log4Net into production. There was a bug a well-known, now legendary bug in the rolling file appender. It did not roll. Just the logs got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But the log4net was strongly typed.
Yeah.
And then I fixed the bug. The people who worked on log4net cared not.
Yep.
Would not take the equivalent of the pull request, which was a diff file emailed in a mailing list. Their deep and profound apathy over the course of 9 months caused me to eventually fork log4net and sign it my own thing.
Right.
And then I spent the following 5 years dealing with my own fork of log4net with its own private, with its own strong name.
Right.
Now that's an impugnment again. Impugnment, is that a word?
I don't know.
That is a Jacques Hughes. That is a bad thing for strong naming, to be clear. Sure. But also the open source process, Git didn't exist, pull request didn't exist, all these things didn't exist. But the point was that the bank didn't fully understand that we had taken this deep fundamental dependency.
Yes. Yeah. And the deeper you are down the stack in the dependency graph, and as people start taking dependencies on you, not just from apps, but from other libraries. So now you've got nested dependencies where you become, this is like left pad, right? Where you become.
That's exactly what I was going. Yeah.
The potential for that to create a house of cards type of effect is real. I mean, now certainly the situations that can cause that to be a real problem are somewhat limited, but they do happen, as you just pointed out. You had a bug, it was affecting your app. The product owners, for whatever reason, weren't interested in taking the fix. So what are you to do? Now, if you had 17 libraries in your solution that were also depending on that other library where you'd identified the bug, you forking it now means that you have 17 libraries that aren't using the version that you forked, unless you go off and fork those as well, because it's somewhat viral. Now, the strong naming thing is no longer a concern in .NET Core because it's not part of the identity check anymore. But there are still other ways, obviously, that can cause issues. And and each platform, I think, has their technical behaviors that affect how this affects apps on that platform. Like in Node, your dependencies come in as source code. So, it's a little different. They all get loaded at runtime and there's no strong type checking. And so you can get away with a lot more, but the problem still exists, as we saw with leftpad. When it was removed, people's builds failed because the dependency just disappeared one day. Yep. And they've taken steps to stop that happening again. But yeah, that's a really interesting discussion. I've noticed the other one that's come up recently is this idea of LTS versus sort of tip or current, right? And so a lot of platforms, whether they're operating systems or open source application platforms like Node, have a concept of a long-term servicing branch or version versus a tip or a current version, and they have different support life cycles and bars, or like what's the universal term? We use the term bar at Microsoft, but like the criteria for accepting change. Yeah, so like, if I want to make this change, it's like, well, we only take these types of changes in this branch. If you want new things on this API, you have to do it in this branch, right? And we have a similar thing in .NET Core. But that also impacts all the third-party libraries, because it's like, well, let's take ASP.NET Core as an example. If we have an LTS and we have a current, and they're different versions, and you as a library author want to integrate with us, so you want to offer banana package on NuGet.org that adds a tag helper, right? There's an easy way to integrate with ASP.NET Core. You're using our APIs. And you might want to use an API that we introduced in the new version, in the current version. It's not in the LTS version. What do? Do you create two packages, one for LTS customers and one that has its own problems in .NET? If they use the same type name, now you've got type conflicts. Do you have one package with different versions? So that works. That's usually the default thing, except that the NuGet system is kind of designed to offer you updates all the time, right? So if you go to the NuGet dialog and there's a newer version of the package you're using, it's going to go, hey, you should use the newer version. It's available. But what if you're on the LTS train? You don't really want the new version because it might depend on you you don't have.
This brings up the even larger issue, which is the lots and lots of people out there are bringing in new versions of stuff just because they're new versions.
Right.
Like we joke about NPM. It's easy to joke about NPM. When was the last time you made a new Hello World application and then got a clean restore of NPM?
Yeah.
That didn't warn you that something was obsoleted or something. And the same thing is happening in the .NET world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where, hey, look, a minor version of a minor version of a build of a fix just came out, and I'm not really sure
Yeah, and
Why I should take that
even
note.
considering that in the isolation of that one library that changed is complex enough, right? There's a lot of things that could go wrong just by updating a single library, even if nothing else depends on it. But then multiply that to, well, I have 14 other things that depend on that library because it's so low down, JSON.NET or a logging library, whatever else, whatever it might be, right? Something in ASP.NET. And then like for humans to be able to determine how could my app possibly change by updating this is difficult, right? It's not really something you can rationalize about without actually just trying it and doing it, and then knowing that this is going to update all the time. And as you bring in more and more dependencies, obviously, the opportunity for an update to appear at any given time gets higher and higher. And you kind of, but there's this whole paradox of that. I want libraries to be maintained. If I want to take a dependency, I kind of like the idea that updates are coming out, right? Because it means someone's working on it and someone cares. But at the same time, now I have to think about when am I supposed to update this? And if I report a bug, here's an example. If I report a bug on a library that I'm using and I haven't updated it for a year because of the reasons we just articulated, like why should I update if I don't need the new version? And then I come across a bug. And the owner goes, well, yeah, I fixed that bug like 3 months ago. Here's the version. But they did that in a major release. And so they broke stuff, right? They're following SemVer.
Right, so they fixed the bug and they did a major thing.
Right, because they don't want to service 2 trains or 3 trains. They're just they're an open source library.
And so that's the other
maintainer,
thing
right?
that's interesting, because there's Microsoft doesn't get, and I'm putting on the full Kool-Aid here, so bear with me. But Microsoft doesn't get credit for back compat.
Right.
You know, we are maintaining 3 or 4 different trains of .NET Core right now.
3.
And 3, soon to be 4. And you know, but with Node, it's like, well, good luck, right? And most people are just blindly upgrading to the latest version.
Well, to be fair, with Node has 2 trains. Node has an LTS and a current. But here's the interesting thing. I don't know of any NPM packages that do. Maybe they do. Maybe they do. But again, because JavaScript is a little bit different, you can get away with a bit more. But the joint doesn't maintain the LTS release.
Yeah.
So the active development of Node all happens in current. There is a consortium of companies who maintain LTS. Like it's the Node LTS support consortium group or something they're called. And those are companies that have a vested interest in there being a stable, long-term supported version of Node, because that's typically what, you know, quote unquote enterprise customers want. And so they got together and they own the onus of looking at fixes that have gone into current and backporting them into LTS, and vice versa. If they discover an issue themselves, they can fix it in LTS and then send a PR to get it integrated into current. And they take that burden on because they see value in it. Now, that works great for large platforms like Node or Microsoft platforms where we have a team who's paid to do that. But what does that mean for the wider ecosystem within the community? If you're a random NPM package author, is it up to you is it just expected that you should maintain an LTS version of your package and a current version so that customers can choose? I mean, that's a lot of work, right? And there's a lot of stuff to keep up with. So I don't know. There's been some good articles about this recently, and we're doing some thinking about this on our own side because it does affect the ecosystem. Having these trains is something that library authors in particular have to think about. And then customers on the end, like application owners, have to think about it in the terms of, well, what experience we have to think about it. What experience do customers get if they're using LTS or current and there are packages in their graph that have updates? You know, to your point before, what you don't want is for someone to suddenly update some third-party package that they were using very successfully, and then it somehow lifts half of their app into current and leaves the other half in LTS. So it's an interesting discussion, and I like that this is being discussed on blogs, and I've seen it discussed in some places in the community recently, and I think we'll continue to have this discussion and figure out what it is. I don't know if there's a happy equilibrium that works for every single community. I think it's something that you have to take into consideration with the unique sort of characteristics of the platform that you're talking about, whether it be .NET or Java or Go or Node, because they all work differently. Yeah, I don't know. So that was interesting.
I have noticed in many years of maintaining large systems that there is a school of thought that says basically have as few dependencies as you can. Some people, this is why some big enterprises build it all themselves.
And we still see that today. I've seen a bunch of articles recently, specifically around Net Standard, if we bring it closer to home again, which one of the big changes from Net Standard 1X to Net Standard 2 was sort of how the Net Standard library itself was factored. With Net Standard 2, it all basically gets compiled away. And so Net Standard 2 itself essentially is now just a single assembly. And even that dependency you don't see. Whereas in Net Standard 1X, it was all atoms. And so every single assembly you brought in was represented in the graph. And so if you're installing something into an application that's based on a Net Standard 1X platform, so .NET 4.6, anything before 4.6.1, or .NET Core 1X, when you install a library, NuGet says, yeah, I'm going to install Banana for you, but I'm going to install this other 2 pages of dependencies as well. And we're now seeing feedback from community, like library author owners, who are getting feedback from their customers saying, why am I seeing all these dependencies coming into my app now that you've moved to Net Standard? Net Standard 2 solves it, but if the customer isn't on a Net Standard 2 platform yet, it doesn't solve it for them, obviously. So as I said, if you're on .NET 4.6 or if you're on .NET Core 1X still, you still see this thing. And so we would really love to get to getting everyone moved to .NET Standard 2 as quickly as possible. But then that has its own issues at the moment that we're working through as well. I know some people have been hit by the .NET 4.7.1 issue, whereby certain libraries that are part of .NET Standard 2, if you were targeted .NET 4.6.1 or 4.6.2, and then now your app runs on 4.7.1, certain types explode, and they're working on that at the moment. And so I can see Nick and stuff talking about this in the chat at the moment, because this is something I know they've dealt with recently. So yeah, it's all complicated. We're trying to make it as easy as possible, but as versions change and as things like LTS and current come to being, all these various sort of axes and pivots just require more variables for people to reason about. And I can't say I can look at other platforms and say they don't have that problem. It seems that no matter where I look, these are things that people have to think about as soon as you have an open source, a body of open source code, a community around that where people have to build things that plug into that, and then a series of apps used by customers who want support from the original company as well as other people's apps that they're bringing in. It's a lot of stuff to think about.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I see Nick here saying he dropped Net 4.5 support due to the Net Standard 1X dependencies. And he said it was nuts. And most are okay with Net Standard 2. It's insanely better, +1 on all the changes there. So yeah, Net Standard 2 did make things a lot better, but not everyone is on a Net Standard 2 platform yet. So I think we're in a bit of a transition phase, as is often the case when we make changes. But yeah. And then Dane just said, Nick should just decide for everyone. He can just make the decision for the community.
The thing is, though, like I appreciate Nick and I appreciate Stack Overflow, but you, the set of all people who are not Nick, are not Stack Overflow.
No. Hang on. He's not talking about in the context of the Stack Overflow, the app. He's talking about himself in the context as a library author.
As a library author. Okay, just checking.
Get packages to other customers, to be very clear. Nick has his own quabbles with being an application owner, building the Stack Overflow app, which are very well founded, and we need to figure out how to work through those things as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is all good. Anyway, was there anything else that you've got from the community that you think we should talk about? Otherwise, I can give a brief update on what we're doing.
And then I will probably go and continue panicking on my talk soon.
Okay. Well, I also wanted a quick update that we've been promising is a strong word. I've been mentioning 2.1 for a while. We are getting much closer to having some news about that. In fact, we hope to do a video session before the holidays, a Channel 9 session with Scott, not you, our boss, Hunter, Richard, and myself, sort of going over the high level scope for 2.1, and hopefully some dates for that as well, some rough dates. And people who are watching our GitHub repos will see issues in the 2.1 milestone now. So if you want to go and have a look, you can sort of see some of the features that are being worked on. There aren't, I will say, so the big features like Signaler is being worked on. Signaler is still committed for 2.1, so we have a bunch of folks working on that. We do have some big sort of resource intensive items, that is, they take a lot of engineering time to work on, that don't directly relate to new features. And so 2.1 will be a release where there are some new features, but perhaps not as many as you would usually see for a milestone this size, simply because we're spending a lot of engineering time working on more foundational issues, which I'll explain. So for example, the .NET, what we call the inner loop performance. I think, Scott, you've talked about inner loop this term before. I think you used it on your blog post recently, which is basically we use inner loop to talk about all the things that developers do multiple times a day. Like I make a code change, I save it, I build, I relaunch the application. I make a code change in my test, I rediscover tests, I rerun tests. Those type of things. Okay, I add a package, I have to restore, and then I build, and I see compilation errors, and I make changes. Those are all formed the inner loop. once you've committed to source control, you've exited the inner loop at that point. So you could kind of claim it as, oh, anything that a developer does while they're in their active workspace before they push it back into source control is, inner loop. .NET Core, whether you're in VS or the command line, has some parts of that experience that we're nowhere near happy with. That is, it's just too slow. And so we're doing a massive effort across lots of teams right now. MS Build, Roslyn, the compiler teams, the project system in Visual Studio, the .NET CLI, the .NET Core SDK, the ASP.NET Core team. What's that, 6? I think it's actually 7 teams who are working together to try and isolate where are we losing that most of that time right now for the various scenarios that we care about, and really trying to chip away to improve that. We've made some good progress. Some of that was released in VS 15.5 yesterday, but we have a long way to go yet to really get to the type of performance that we want, which is, for very large solutions, we have a couple of representative solutions right now. We have the Roslyn solution, which is the solution that actually builds the Roslyn compiler. And we have Orchard Core, which I think went into beta recently, actually, John. Which is a large solution. It has like 120 projects in it, and it's all .NET Core. And we're using those two as kind of our real world test solutions to test what is the performance like. And we're doing it both from the command line and in Visual Studio because those characteristics are quite different. And so we have a long way to go. We have made some progress. We've got some work in progress right now, which we're hoping to get some good gains from once it finishes. But I think we're going to have quite a lot more work to do after that. But the thing is, we care now. We've always cared, but we care more now. It's a top priority for the next release. So we're spending a lot of engineering resources on that. We're also doing a lot of work around improving our build system so that we can build new releases much quicker than we could before, which is important just to tighten that feedback loop for ourselves so that when we make changes, we can get a full build out very quickly, and then we can verify them, we can experience them, those type of things. So there's a lot of work going into that as well. And then we're making some foundation.
Sorry, while you're mentioning that, sorry to interrupt. So there was core build in the past, and now there's kind of a build tools repo. Is that related to that, or is this?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's related to this, the effort we're doing across teams to ensure that we can build the product consistently using the same set of tools across teams, and so that we can remove some of the delays we have in the process now, which involve like one team has to build their product so it can be ingested by the other team so that it can rebuild on top of that version, and then we can hand the whole kit and caboodle back to the first team so that they can rebuild again. So there's these circular dependency type issues that they're trying to get rid of so they can orchestrate the entire thing. So that the goal is to get to a point where we can, without having to think about it, have the full stack built every day or multiple times a day, to the point that it doesn't just produce assemblies, like it produces installers, it produces the things that we deliver to customers. Like that's really, really important, obviously. So yeah, we're doing a lot of that work right now, which is good. Then we actually start getting closer to feature work. So we've also got some work around the runtime store, which we introduced in 2.0, which is the part of .NET Core that allows ASP.NET Core apps not to have to deploy the ASP.NET Core DLLs into the application. All right, so that's why ASP.NET Core 2 applications are typically much smaller once you publish them than they were in 1X. The assemblies in there are also optimized. They're pre-jittered so that the application can start up faster. There are some issues that we've come across now that the runtime store is out, and we've had to do updates to things in the runtime store. We did a 2.03 servicing release last month in November for the whole stack that we would like to improve. And so we're making a change to how we deliver the ASP.NET Core assets rather than using the runtime store. The runtime store as a feature will continue to exist, but ASP.NET Core will not be in it anymore. We're going to refactor the ASP.NET Core part into a shared framework, which was, if you remember the .NET Core layout on disk, if you go into program files on a Windows machine, you've got like the .NET .exe, and then you've got a bunch of folders next to it. And one of those folders is called shared, and inside that, there's a folder called Microsoft.netcore.app. There will be a new folder next to that called Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.something, right? And that will be where all the ASP.NET Core stuff is that's precompiled and like one big blob for that server. Or for that machine, I should say. And so the meta package that you use right now will still be the mechanism that you use to acquire that and use that in your application. So that part won't change. We're sort of doing all this change under the covers. Like most people won't even see this. It'll just be a seamless transition, even to the point that we hope to roll this change back into the servicing train, so that even if you don't update to 2.1 and you stay on 2.0x, which will become an LTS branch at some point, that you'll get the benefits of this change as well, and we'll just migrate apps silently even after they're published. We call that trampolining. So that the app will be deployed, assuming that ASP.NET Core was in the runtime store, but the .NET host will be updated to know that if you're looking for an assembly and it's not in the application, but the application was deployed for ASP.NET Core, then it needs to go and find them from this shared framework over here. And that solves a whole bunch of problems that we were having specifically for using the runtime store to deliver ASP.NET Core, like that many assemblies, which are designed to update over time. And we're hoping to get some good benefits out of that. So that's a bunch of work going on there. Again, most of this is silent, none of the covers, but it takes resources, so it's worth calling out. And then we actually get to sort of some features. So we're looking at using site extensions in Azure to deploy new versions, to make it easy for customers to experiment with new versions of ASP.NET Core, and also allow them to deploy apps that depend on new versions of ASP.NET Core, whether they're previews or RTM, before they're available in app service, which is kind of cool. We are porting ASP.NET Core, ASP.NET webhooks to Core. So any customer out there who's using webhooks right now in the existing MVC, the traditional MVC, we are building a new version of that for ASP.NET Core on top of the new MVC in that same time frame. We're doing some work around GDPR, the new EU regulations around data protection, data privacy, whatever that stands for. And that'll include some new APIs inside of our cookie policy middleware so that it's easy to implement cookie compliance on your site.
That would have been nice for me a month ago.
Yeah. And the idea is that that will be the default in the templates now. So if you file new, the full template in 2.1, it'll be set up out of the box with some UI that's it's fully customizable. It's just in the template, and a middleware that's installed that does all the basically show a notice to the user to tell them that the site uses cookies and don't write any cookies until they accept. It doesn't do any of the geo stuff. Like, we're not going to ship any solution that lets you determine if someone's in Europe or not. I mean, that's still an exercise to the reader. But at least the mechanism of having some UI, getting consent, have that plumbed through the cookie system and stuff will be there. What else? We're still doing a bunch of Razor tooling improvements. We've got a long series of work we've been doing to really sort of modernize our Razor tooling so that we can get it to work in Visual Studio for Mac, which is a big deal for us. And also so we can start finally lighting up some of these great language editor features that we've never had in ASP.NET, ASPX or Razor, such as find all references and refactoring and rename inside Razor files, even when they're not open in the editor. So we're doing a whole bunch of work in Razor to have that happen. Also to check, to find errors in your Razor files during normal build. Okay, that's also related to the inner loop stuff. We're looking at actually moving to a model by default where your Razor files are actually all compiled as part of the build by default, not just publish. And we're doing work to make that fast enough so that when your application starts up, when you're just doing inner loop work, it's much, much, much faster because we don't have to compile the views in the application. They've already been compiled as part of the build cycle. And we get the benefits of all the caching of the build system and Roslyn and stuff as part of the build cycle. So there's a bunch of work going on there as well, which I'm hoping will get us some really, really good experience.
And then as I'm editing, it just incrementally updates.
Yeah, and then you get all the incremental updates. So once the app is running, you can just go back and change the Razor file. And the app in the background was warming up its in-app compilation system so that if you do change a file after the app is running, you still get the benefits of that, like that instant recompilation of the Razor file once the app is running when you're in a loop. All right, so there's a whole bunch of work going on to do that, which will hopefully, which will end up, I think, making some great experience improvements for developers there. We're doing some work in ANCM, so the ASP.NET Core module, which is the part of IES that hosts ASP.NET Core. Today, that's out of process. So we actually launched .NET XE. We now have an in-process mode so that you can actually have W3WP directly launch the .NET Core CLR and then launch your application in process. So there's a couple of reasons why that's beneficial. One, it's much faster. So we get about a 4 times performance throughput change for Hello World sort of scenario. So that's really, really good. And 2, we think it's going to be more reliable. So in situations where the .NET XE failed to start, and there's lots of reasons why .NET might not start, right? You may, like for anyone who was watching the live stream I did before where I fixed the live ASP.NET website from the bug that we all found a few weeks ago, if you have the wrong version of the runtime installed, your app won't start, right? You say, run the application. It says, well, this app needs 1.1. You've only got 2.0. It'll fail. If that happens behind IIS, the process just fails. IIS doesn't know what to do. It's like, well, .NET XE didn't start. Sorry. And you just get a white screen. When we're running in proc, we can now get distinct error codes back from the host, from the .NET host, and it can tell you, oh, the application didn't start because it was missing this framework, and then we can give you a nice friendly error page. We can write that error out to the IIS logs, like into the event log and into the IIS failed request tracing, so it should be much easier to diagnose issues with why your .NET Core app didn't run behind IIS. So we're hoping that that's going to, and also it should just be more reliable because there's a lot less moving parts. We don't have to like create sockets and forward requests over pulls into the other process and stuff. So it won't be the default because we can't make a change like that, obviously, in band. The intent is for it to be the default for new projects. So when you file new a 2.1 project, in proc would be configured by default. But for any existing application, it'll continue to be out of process until you change it to in proc. And then also, if you are doing in proc, there are some caveats. You can only run one application per app pool in proc because we can't load multiple versions of the .NET Core CLR side by side in one process. We don't have app domains and things we did in .NET Framework. So there's a couple of drawbacks, but they tend to be fairly edgy. Like most people don't use those features. So
well, it might matter more in Windows, but in Linux, like they fork processes like candy.
Yeah, well, this is all Windows I'm talking about, right? Yeah. So, what else is going on? So we're still doing the Kestrel work to move to the sockets transport instead of libuv. We still plan to have the libuv transport. We won't remove it, but the hope is that we can default Kestrel into one to the sockets transport, the .NET managed sockets implementation transport, so that we have a common networking base in .NET used, whether you're newing up sockets yourself or whether you're using Kestrel in ASP.NET Core. And then that way we just get to share the benefit of all the great investments the .NET Core networking team has been doing for their cross-platform networking support. We also hope it'll make the performance between Linux and Windows a little bit more consistent. Today, Windows is a bit faster with our libuv transport. I think the sockets work the goal is to have the sockets work be just as fast as libuv and then have it be a little more consistent between the two platforms.
Can I ask a quick conspiracy theory thing?
Go for it.
So you just said that Windows is a little bit faster and we're doing our best to make that not the case. Does it matter if there are people who are out there thinking that, like, well, maybe they're always going to make sure Windows is a little bit faster?
Well, it doesn't matter to me, but it's not true.
It's not true. Okay, just checking.
I mean, there have been times where it was faster on Linux.
It all depends on the scenario. Like it really does depend on the scenario. And I'm talking about benchmarks, like very specific benchmarks. Certainly
just asking.
Yeah, .NET Core 1, Linux was a brand new platform for us, so I think it's not unfair to blame the fact that Windows was faster because our Linux implementation was just newer.
Okay.
And then as we invest a lot more into the Linux side of the .NET Core runtime, the assumption is and I'm talking, the difference is very small. Like it's not like it's twice as fast or anything on Windows. Like in some scenarios, it's 7% faster or something. And these are benchmarks I'm talking about. So it's not something anyone should be concerned about, but it's just one of the advantages we hope by getting on top of a common base. Another thing we're doing is important, which is we're looking to default to HBS for new projects. So we're doing today, we did a blog post a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if anyone read it. I hope they did. About setting up ASP.NET Core for HBS for development.
I read all your blog posts.
Oh, thank you. Dan and Glenn wrote this one. It is not trivial today. It's actually quite a lot of configuration to get it correct. If you're doing it all behind IIS, you just use IIS as wonderful, easy HBS configuration. But if you're doing it all in Kestrel, it's quite a lot more setup. And so part of the work we're doing is to make it a whole bunch of API work, some middleware work, some configuration and tooling work, to make it so that A, we can make HTTPS the default in new ASP.NET Core templates, and B, the code required to do that is not, stab your eyes out horrible. So like it's one line in the middleware configuration, it's one line in the config, and then Kestrel will automatically find the config bindings, bind to HTTPS by default as well as HTTP. So today, Kestrel, in lack of any configuration, will just assume you want to listen on localhost 5000. That will also include 5001 for HTTPS in 2.1 is the current working plan. And then templates will, everything other than empty, will now have a line in them that will do redirection to HTTPS by default. Okay, and this is all just part of the effort of, one, GDPR requires that data be secure, and so you need to send it over a secure connection. Two, there's a general movement, obviously, which is more and more sites are going to HTTPS by default because more people care about privacy between your browser and the endpoint. And now Chrome will warn you if you start doing any data entry in a site that isn't over HTTPS. Like it puts a big not secure at the top of the page in the address bar, and that's not very nice. So we don't want that to be the default experience when you're building applications with ASP.NET Core. And then 4, anyone who's worked on the web for a while, I think, knows that there can be issues that rise when you are in production in HTTPS, but you're not doing development in HTTPS. And so you can get differences that come in that you maybe don't see. There are rules that apply to things that you can do when the site is not HTTPS versus when it is. And so it's just better if it's consistent everywhere. So we want that to be the default experience. So we're doing that work. And then there's some other stuff, but that's really most of the stuff that's committed right now to get us to the first preview, which we're hoping will be early next year. I don't think I'm breaking any rules by saying that. And then we would hope to do a second preview where we page in some smaller features after that, and obviously address feedback that we get from the first preview. And then ideally we would do a true RC with a go live license after that, and then an RTM sometime after that. So, yeah.
So there were some questions on Twitter about how, like, because you'd mentioned before about how, we started with the look at performance by looking, at low level, plain text, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then you said we've been kind of moving up the stack and looking more at data scenarios and things like that.
So we have an ongoing effort that I didn't mention, which is we have a working group that's looking at data access performance. And we have a GitHub repository that you can use. You can track our performance there. So if you go to github.com/ASP.NET/data access performance. The V team or the working group is doing their work inside there. Now we're using the Tech and Power Fortunes benchmark as kind of the litmus test here. We traditionally have performed pretty badly in that. What's more interesting than the fact that we perform badly in it is that all of our entries in it perform about the same. It doesn't matter if you use EF, if you use Dapper, if you use ADO.NET directly, if you use Razor, if you use string concatenation, it sucks everywhere. It's all about 20,000 requests per second within 1,000 requests or so.
Where are you saying?
It's in the chat. GitHub ASP.NET data access performance.
Yep. And benchmarks, prototypes, and discussions for database access performance investigation. Yep. Yeah, there it is. And so far what we've done is Andrew here on the EF team, along with Sebastian from the Orchard team, they have written a prototype data access driver for Postgres completely in managed code. And we've codenamed it Peregrine. So we have Kestrel as the web server and Peregrine is our data access library. Just to help us do this initial investigation. And what we've basically determined is that there's nothing wrong with C# and the .NET Core runtime's ability to talk to a database if you just consider C# the language and the runtime. All the performance issues are somewhere between C# as the language and the database. I mean, that's a very large area, right? It's ADO.NET, it's the driver for ADO.NET you're using, it's the application code you've written, there's a lot of things. But we have a version of the Fortunes Tech and Power benchmark internally right now that uses this new sort of Peregrine driver. It's not even a driver, it's really just a low-level library, right? That's a wire protocol implementation for Postgres that does the Fortunes test. But effectively, I think the last time we checked, it would be in the top 5, right? Or if not number 1. So ASP.NET Core, middleware, and then basically talking directly to Postgres using .NET sockets, and then Peregrine speaking the Postgres protocol, if that makes sense, right? It's not a generic data access library. It's a Postgres library that can do very limited things. But that proves a whole bunch of things. It proves if you remove all the abstractions and all the API for data access, things are perfectly fine. Things are super, super fast. And so now we need to go through the process of kind of adding back functionality or wrapping some of the existing .NET abstractions around it, like ADO.NET, and then finding out how much you lose. Like, where are we losing all this performance? Are we losing it because of the memory allocation that if it gets forced upon you because of the shape of the ADO.NET API? Are we losing it because of the implementation of the Postgres driver? Are we losing it because of something else? And so we're doing that. So we've made good progress. And people, like I said, who are interested, they can follow along with that progress on that repo. But we're serious. We've got people dedicated to it. Nothing is off the table. Like, we don't know exactly where the issue is right now. We just know that if we talk directly to Postgres using sockets and C#, it's really fast. So now we have to go back and figure out, well, what is it about everything else in the stack that makes it slow? And then we can make a decision about what we have to do. Like, for example, maybe we end up with a new ADO.NET driver. Maybe we end up not using ADO.NET, and there's like a fast driver for EF when you talk to Postgres, and then the ADO.NET compliant driver. Maybe it's we help the Postgres ADO.NET driver owner, who is an open source library, contributor. It's not owned by us; it's owned by someone in the community. Maybe we work with them, which we are already actually, to improve their driver. We don't know where the bulk of the issue is yet. So good investigation though. Happy with the progress so far. Yeah, so someone asked about the roadmap. My goal is to publish a 2018 roadmap in the same spirit as the VS Code roadmap. So for those who haven't seen the VS Code roadmap, I really liked the way Chris did it. So it's thematic. It's not a list of issues. It's like in 2018, these are the things that we care about. These are the things that we think we're going to go off and investigate. So I plan to do a 2018 ASP.NET Core roadmap of that ilk. So it won't be a list of issues or a bullet list of features. It'll be, these are the themes that we care about: microservices and performance and cloud and blah, 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 whatever it is, right? And we'll do some blurbs for each of those. Is this it looks like someone's showing the
VS Code
one? Yeah.
All right. It's like happiness.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
TypeScript and an extension ecosystem.
Right. So this is like
and then they have their
big
little
themes.
These are their stretch goals and stuff. So we should just copy that and then
that was my plan. Just to kind of do
VS
something and just
Code
copy this.
.NET.
And try to pick those big themes or those big rocks as we talk about. Then in addition to that, the 2.1 work that I just enumerated isn't particularly well structured in our GitHub repos right now, because a lot of the tracking work is being done in our planning issues from when we were doing our planning effort. And Glenn and I are in the process now of migrating all of those to public issues and ensuring that it's being properly tracked again in all the repos. So that if you just go and look at the 2.1 milestones, you'll be able to just enumerate all the features and enhancements and kind of see the body of work that we're doing. So so that'll all happen over the next month. And I also hope that when we do this Channel 9 video with Hunter and Richard, that Hunter will let us talk about our proposed dates. Because I like to be able to tell people those things. But a lot of that will depend on our status and stuff. So
I need to go.
Yeah, then you should go and prepare for your...
so someone else will have to sing the dramatic zoom out song.
Or we could just finish it because it's been,
let's zoom.
I think I provide value in that way.
Yeah. Okay, wait, I'm going to lock on Damien.
You know what's really unfortunate? I just noticed. We have 99 people watching. We couldn't get over 100 today.
No, we were over 100 for a period of time.
Well, we only have 99 watching.
We really need to return this camera too.
Oh, well, that's a shame. Can we buy it instead of returning it?
Yeah, that's a good point. I just think I'm burning political capital from Logitech by continuing to abuse their excellent camera that you should all buy.
I love this camera, and you should buy it. And if we want to pay them for it, that would be great. I'm happy to do that because it's a great camera.
Mm-hmm.
All right, zooming out. Dramatic.
One button. It's so dramatic.
Dramatic.